like to follow along with me in your Bible on the screen, the scripture I picked out for today is from Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 11. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. Your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on the cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
So if you were here about 6 years ago now, I can't believe it's that long since I first did this message, or this is a little variation of that message, but pretty much the same thing. And if you were here, you're probably wondering what a post turtle is. And how I came up with this title. And Susie and I were riding down Greedy Highway right prior to that first time I did this message, and she asked me, she knew I had a message coming up, and she asked me if I'd been thinking about what I was going to do for a message, and I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do one on a post turtle. So there's a little bit of silence over there on the other side of the car, because she's thought, what in the world is he thinking about now? Because I think she thinks about that a lot about me sometimes. And so I told her, I explained it to her, and I told her how this happened. And I was at a banquet in Atlanta in 1998. I was at a nursery show, and we have a banquet there every year, and I was forced to go that year. But I'm glad I did, because a friend of mine, Jeff Howell, they give out these awards every year. And they gave out this Young Nurseryman of the Year. It's a pretty prestigious award, really, because it's from the young nurserymen from the whole southeastern United States. So Jeff comes up to the podium to get his award accepted, and he gets up there and he says, well, I feel sort of like a post turtle up here. And I was kind of the same as Susie. I was like, what in the world is he talking about? But he went on to explain that there's a couple of things you need to understand about a post turtle. And the first thing is that he doesn't get up there by himself. And the second thing is he's going to need some help getting down. So Jeff went on to use that to attribute his success in his life to, he knew he didn't win. And any of you that's ever won an award for anything, you don't win an award by yourself. I mean, it's not just you. You may be the person on that plaque. But he went on to say that when you get an award, you will get it because of the support of the people around you, the people in your family, your friends, your church family, and the love and support of them. And Jeff went on to, he attributed his success to his faith too. And it's kind of funny, I ran into Jeff. We see each other from time to time, maybe at a meeting or a trade show, and I saw Jeff and I was talking to him, and I said, you remember that when you did that at the SNA that year? And he said, oh yeah. And I said, well, I used that. I said, I'm a lay speaker at my church, and I said, I use that for messaging. He said, well, that's funny. He said, I'm a lay speaker at my Methodist church, and I used it too. But I thought, when I saw this, and I thought about this, I looked it up online. And if you look it up online, don't pay attention to all this. They turned it into this political thing that's just stupid. And but I thought there's a lot of imagery, and there were so many messages in this post turtle. And the first one I thought about, when I thought about it, was Apostle Paul, and I thought about loneliness, and I thought about him being in prison and how lonely he probably was, and he did some of his best writing while he was in prison in Caesarea. He wrote Philippians there, Colossians, Ephesians, and Philemon. But he still had to be extremely lonely. He was chained to a guard there, and was strictly confined there while he was awaiting his sentence. But in these letters, he was often upbeat, and he was joyful, and he was encouraging to his friends, and he thanked them for how much they had blessed him. And most scholars agree, based on Paul's letter to Timothy, that after about 2 years, he eventually got freed from his captivity. And he went, probably traveled through Greece and Philippi and Turkey at that time. But eventually he was in prison again. And this second time he was in prison, he wasn't under house arrest. He was put in a cold and dark cell. And Paul truly was lonely at this point. And at the same time, the Emperor Nero had begun a campaign, a ruthless campaign, to destroy Christianity. And the Christians were either in hiding or they were being killed. That had to be extremely painful for Paul, knowing that the church was experiencing such persecution, and there was nothing he could do to help. In his very last letter prior to his execution was 2 Timothy, and he says, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, my righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearance." And at 67 years of age, Paul was taken outside and beheaded, all alone, but hand in hand with Jesus. And I also think that turtle had a sense of helplessness. In 3 of the 4 Gospels, there's the account of Jesus getting into the boat with the disciples on the Sea of Galilee. And they set sail, and when they first set sail, the water's calm. Jesus decides to take a nap, but pretty soon the storm blows up. And the disciples are scared, and they feel helpless, and they don't know what else to do except to wake Jesus up. Jesus immediately calms the storm. And in Matthew chapter 8, verse 26, he tells them, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, "Guys, do you not have any faith? I mean, were you really afraid of this little storm?" And I think he wanted them to understand that there was going to be far greater storms in their lives. And the disciples learned that day that the real danger wasn't outside the boat. The real danger was inside the boat. It was within their own hearts. And in a word, they lacked faith. And without faith, their lives were at risk. And we have storms that rage in each and every one of us. That can't be cured by ourselves. It takes the power of God's love as revealed in Jesus. And he's the only hope of calming these storms in our lives that can harm us and cripple our souls. And at some point, if that post turtle stays up there long enough, he's going to start feeling sorry for himself. Now, I know maybe all of you, some of you, I know I have a pity party for yourself, or 2, or 3, or 20, or 50. But I didn't get that promotion at work. God, my spouse doesn't appreciate me. My family doesn't appreciate me. My children don't appreciate me. Why does all the bad stuff always happen to me? Well, it's not fair, and certainly it's not my fault. So, if there was anyone in the Bible that should have felt sorry for himself, it would have been Job. In Job chapter 1, verse 1 says, "In the house of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. That man was blameless and upright. He feared God, and he shunned evil." Job was wealthy. He had 10 children, thousands of sheep and donkeys, and camels, hundreds of oxen, many servants. But God decided to test Job. And through no fault of his own, Job lost everything. His wealth, his children, his health, and even his friends turned on him because they said, "You must be a sinner because God is punishing you so." And he was pushed to the very limits, but Job never wavered in his faith. And only God knew the purpose behind Job's suffering, yet he never explained to Job why he did it. And in spite of all this, Job never gave up on God, even in the very depths of his suffering. He never placed his hope in wealth, in his wisdom, or his friends. Job focused only on God. So I thought about abandonment too when I thought about the post-struggle. And I couldn't imagine anyone that would have felt any more abandoned at any time than Jesus the night he was arrested. I mean, the disciples put up a somewhat of a struggle, but they all scattered pretty quick. And even though Jesus knew that this had to happen and would happen, he still had to have some sense of bewilderment and surprise that the men that had traveled with him and studied with him for the last 3 years had all just left on his own. And at his death, there's no mention of any of the disciples there, except the Apostle John, and he's not mentioned by name. And Jesus gave him the task of taking care of his mother and taking her into his house and caring for her. In John chapter 19, verses 26 and 27 say, when Jesus saw his mother standing there, and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that time on, this disciple took her into his home. And Jesus wanted Mary to know that although he was leaving her physically, that she would never be abandoned. And we're never abandoned. Jesus' death gave us that. So that brings us to pride next. And as I said, that turtle's going to have to become humble before we can get help getting down. And pride may well be the hardest thing we struggle with as Christians. The great author C.S. Lewis addresses pride in his book, Mere Christianity. And I want to read you some excerpts from that. And he states that there is one vice of which no man in the world is free. Everyone loathes when they see it in someone else, and of which hardly any people ever imagine that they are guilty of themselves. And he goes on to say that there is no fault that makes a person more unpopular, and no fault which we are unconscious of in ourselves. And the more we have it ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. He states that it is the essential vice, the utmost evil. Lust, anger, greed, drunkenness, and everything else are mere flea bites in comparison. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. And as long as you are proud, you cannot know God. A proud person is always looking down on things and people. And of course, as long as you are looking down, you cannot see something that is above you. The opposite of pride is humility. But being humble is hard. And why? Because as soon as you believe that you are humble, in essence, you're not. And that's a catch-22 if there ever was one. I couldn't quite wrap my brain around that. But I found this old Mac Davis song, and I wanted to share a little bit of it to you. And I think other people of my generation, we all remember who Mac Davis is, and country singer. But Mac's song goes like this: "Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. I can't wait to look in the mirror because I'll get better looking every day. To know me is to love me. I must be a hell of a man. Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble, but I'm doing the best I can." And then I found this story about there's a pompous deacon, and I don't mean to pick on our Baptist brethren here, maybe a little. But he was trying to impress upon a class of boys the importance of living the Christian life. And he said, why do people call me a Christian? Just a moment of silence in the class there. And one of them said, well, maybe it's because they don't know you. But humility makes us aware of our personal limitations. Humility means that understanding the delights, pains, and needs of others are as important as our own, even though we may not feel that way. And when we're humble, we can laugh at our own self-importance, and sometimes even we can set that aside. We can see our own faults and the strengths of others, and we can recognize how much we've been given and how very little of that we have earned. And in my research this week, I came across some really good excerpts from a man named Alfred Ells. And Mr. Ells is a senior therapist with New Life Clinic, and that's a Christ-centered counseling and educational ministry. He's a marriage and family counselor, seminar speaker, and author of several books. And he tells us 10 ways we can humble ourselves. And the first one is routinely confess your sin to God. All of us sin and fall short of the glory of God. However, too few of us have a routine practice of rigorous self-honesty examination. Weekly, even daily, review our own heart behavior and couple that with confession to God. Take wrong patiently. And this author says that was a difficult one for him. When something is unjust, I want to react and rectify it. However, patiently responding to the unjust accusations and actions of others demonstrates our strengths of godly character and provides an opportunity to put on humility. Actively submit to authority, the good and the bad. Our culture does not value submission, rather it promotes individualism. How purposely and actively do you work on submission to those whom God has placed as authorities in your life? Receive correction and feedback from others graciously. In the Phoenix area, local East Valley pastor was noted for graciously receiving any negative feedback or correction. And he would say, "Thank you for caring enough to share that with me. I will pray about it and get back to you." Accept a lowly place. If you found yourself wanting to sit at the head of the table, wanting others to recognize your contribution or become offended when others are honored or chosen, then pride is present. Your purpose is to support others being recognized rather than you. Choose to serve others. When we serve others, we're serving God's purposes in our lives. Doing so reduces our focus on ourselves and builds the kingdom of God instead of the kingdom of self. And be quick to forgive. Forgiveness is possibly one of the greatest acts of humility we can do. To forgive is to acknowledge a wrong that has been done to us, and also to further release our right of repayment for that wrong. Cultivate a grateful heart. The more we develop an attitude of gratitude for the gift of salvation, the life He has given us, the more true our perspective of self. A grateful heart is a humble heart. Always speak well of others. Saying negative things about others puts them one down and us one up, a form of pride. Speaking well of others edifies them and builds them up instead of us. And the last one is, treat pride as a condition that always necessitates embracing the cross. It is our nature to be proud, and it is God's nature in us that brings humility. Committing to a lifestyle of daily dying to self and living through Him is the foundation for true humility. And I wanted to come up with a sort of a true life situation to go with this message. And I thought about a book that Susie and I read quite a few years ago now. And it's a book about a young man named Chris McCandless. And it's called Into the Wild. And it's by, the author is John Krakauer. It's been made into a movie since, and it's really a good book and a great movie if you've ever seen it. Never seen it. But Chris decided when he finished college that he was just going to pretty much abandon his family. And he didn't. His family had no idea what was going on and this was going to happen. And he just left everything behind. No warnings, no indication. He simply abandoned everything about his former life. Abandoned his car, buried his money. He gave himself a new name. And he pretty much just cut off all contact with all family members. And he traveled around the country for several years doing odd jobs, living in different places. But his real dream He wanted to go live off the land in Alaska. So in 1992, he hitchhiked up to Alaska. Had a man take him out down the dirt road, just dropped him off. He just walked into the woods. He took a rifle with him, but took very little food, and he thought he could just forage and hunt game and live like that. Well, he came up on this old abandoned bus while he was out there, and he's kind of set up residence in the bus. And he kept a journal, and about 2 months in, he wrote this: "Rained in, river looks impassable, lonely, scared." Loneliness had apparently set in here. But around this time, he did manage to kill a moose. And that was his largest game by far. But his excitement didn't last very long when he tried to dress it and cure the meat and everything. He had no experience. He's an inexperienced hunter too. So most of the meat spoiled. And helplessness began to set in here. And here's another quote from his journal: "Henceforth, will learn to accept my errors, however great they may be." And Chris was beginning to starve to death slowly. And he began to realize that he was in trouble. And he tried to walk back out the way he came in, but when he came in, he crossed this little stream, and on his way back out, because of the rain and the snow melt, it had become an impassable river. So he made it back to the bus. And a few weeks before his death, he wrote this in his journal: